Raven Johnson, your teammate, fellow Gamecock. Cocks up.
Cocks up, baby.
Let's go.
Yeah, I'm excited.
And I'm trying to look through the rest of Gianna Neepkins is the one from that she played for UCLA's
as well,
national championship team.
Medina Okot to Atlanta.
There you go.
Gamecocks. I mean, they're big.
Gamecocks.
Atlanta's gonna be big.
Years ago,
Cocks up.
Caitlin 3 Clark looked Raven Johnson dead in the eye and waved her off. A gesture so sharp and dismissive, it went viral instantly, sparkling the most heated debates in women's college basketball, and reportedly pushed Johnson to the edge of quitting the sport entirely. Fast forward to April 13th, 2026, and those two women are now teammates. Music, same locker room, same practice court, same goal. If you think that's just a feel-good story, you haven't been paying attention. The Indiana Fever just made one of the most psychologically fascinating roster moves in recent WNBA history. And on the surface, it looks like a simple draft pick, but underneath it is a story about revenge, redemption, elite basketball strategy, and an entire league reshaping itself in real time.
It's like, wow. Like, no beef. Obviously, like, it's so funny, like, the fans always have more beef than the players actually do, so it's, like, always entertaining. You read all this stuff, and, like, fans are hating on one person, hating on another, and then you are playing with that said person. And so I think it's gonna be fine. Like, everyone has their thoughts, but, like, when you come in and you're in the gym and you're ready to hoop, like, that's literally all it is. So, I mean,
I just laugh. I just laugh because it really does mean something when you put a jersey on. Like, you're really on that person's side.
Yeah, 100%.
And all this stuff before,
it literally doesn't matter.
It literally is. That's who you. I mean, at least on great teams, that's what happens. And so I just feel like both of you all have played at a really high level, and that's what it is, all that college stuff. Now, like, I'm going to drop a couple jokes in the group chat, you know, on the anniversary of, you know, some
you're
stuff.
So lame.
But I'm saying that's teammates. That's what you're supposed to do. 100%. Supposed to poke fun. Supposed to poke fun.
A moment that started everything to understand why this pick matters so much. You need to go back to March 31st, 2023, Iowa versus South Carolina, the NCAA Women's Final Four. Caitlin Clark is cooking. She is scoring from everywhere, pulling up from half court, putting on an absolute show, music, and at one point, she catches Raven Johnson standing on the perimeter well beyond the three-point line. Instead of closing out to guard her, Clark waves her off. The gesture is unmistakable. It basically says, "You're not a threat. I'm not guarding you. Go ahead and shoot." The clip went everywhere. Sports shows debated it. Social media turned it into a meme. Half the internet said it was trash talk. The other half said it was gamesmanship and competitive fire. What almost nobody talked about at the time was what it actually did to Raven Johnson. In a remarkably candid interview earlier this year, Johnson opened up about what that moment did to her mentally. She said the aftermath of that viral clip made her want to quit basketball altogether, not just leave South Carolina, quit the sport she had spent her entire music life building toward. The online reaction was relentless. The comments were vicious, and she had to sit with all of it while still showing up to practice, still competing, still performing at the highest level of college basketball. That is not a small thing. Music. That is a player fighting through a mental health crisis while the whole country is watching and judging every move she makes.
Like, their offense is about to just be fast. Like, their plan is probably just to run. Especially all the people they drafted, like, the offenses was fast. Like, even Cody at Ole Miss, like, Coach Yo wants to push the ball. And that's exactly what she did. So I think that transition game is going to be pretty nice. You know, I'm happy to have my girl Raven. I think Raven is going to have a good W career. Like, I'm excited that she gets to start it at the Fever. So we'll see.
Supposed to poke fun at that. And she did not quit. She came back. She won a national championship. She became the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. And she made herself impossible to ignore on draft night. But what happened next? Nobody could have scripted. The draft night, nobody saw coming. April 13th, 2026. The 2026 WNBA draft in New York. The Indiana Fever are sitting at the 10th overall pick. The room is buzzing. Nobody is quite sure who they're going to take. And then the name gets called Raven Johnson. Indiana Fever pick number 10. The reaction from Aliyah Boston, who is watching from the Fever table, is immediate and electric. You can see it on her face before she even says a word. It is not just excitement about a draft pick. It is something more layered than that. Because Aliyah Boston played with Raven Johnson at South Carolina. She won a national championship with her. She knows exactly what she is getting. And now she also plays alongside Caitlin Clark in Indiana. She is the only person in that building who has shared a court with both of them at the highest level.
I think have done a great job, obviously, of drafting. Some have fallen into their laps, and clearly you were the number one pick. Clearly Caitlin was the number one pick. But I do feel like there are ways to make your franchise better with the others.
Yeah,
and
100%.
Now with an expanded roster, like you're able to draft to get people better and ready in practice.
Yeah,
so.
I think it's funny though that you say that, because even when Caitlin came, obviously in the year, like that year when they beat us in the Final Four, like it was actually kind of funny because I was like, wow, I'm really about to be teammates, and like you dropped 40 on our heads, like that was really trifling. Like you didn't have to do that. But it's great.
Action tells the whole story. After the music pick, Johnson wasted zero time, making her intentions known. Her first post after being drafted simply said, "It's go time." No long speech. Music, no dramatic statement. Just a player who's been waiting 3 years to prove something, getting ready to do exactly that. Why the Fever desperately needed this. Here is what a lot of fans are missing when they focus on the drama angle of this pick. From a pure basketball standpoint, the Indiana Fever had a very specific problem heading into 2026. They had offensive firepower. Caitlin Clark is arguably the most dynamic offensive player in the WNBA. Versatile, intelligent forward who can score and create. The Fever can put up points. That was never the issue. The issue was defense, specifically perimeter defense. Specifically, who is going to be assigned to guard the opponent's best offensive player every single night and make their life miserable. That role requires a very particular kind of player. Someone who does not need the ball to impact the game. Someone who takes pride in the dirty work. Most players quietly avoid someone whose entire identity on the court is built around stopping the other team rather than getting buckets herself. Raven Johnson is exactly that player. She spent 5 years in one of the most suffocating defensive systems in college basketball. Dawn Staley's South Carolina program is built on pressure, length, and collective defensive intensity. You do not survive and thrive in that system for half a decade without developing elite defensive instincts. You do not become the SEC Defensive Player of the Year as a senior without understanding the absolute hardest parts of playing on ball defense at the highest level. Johnson averaged 5 steals per game in her senior season while shooting 48, 6% from the field, and music 39, 8% from 3. She is not just a defensive player. She is a complete player who prioritizes the thing her new team needs most. The Fever front office had one clear need at pick 10. They found the exact right person to fill it. And here is what makes the daily dynamic so compelling. Raven Johnson is likely to start her professional career coming off the bench, which means in practice she will be matched up against the first team, which means she will be guarding Caitlin Clark every single day. Not as an opponent, as a teammate pushing her to get better. Music that is not awkward. That is the most productive possible situation for both players. The reunion nobody fully appreciated. Before we keep going, hit that music like button if you're enjoying the breakdown so far. And if you want every major WNBA move this offseason broken down like this, go ahead and subscribe right now, because we are not stopping here. Now, back to Aliyah Boston, because her reaction deserves its own moment. She has been Caitlin Clark's teammate since Clark was drafted first overall. She has watched Clark transform the Fever into one of the most talked about franchises in professional women's basketball. She understands Clark's game at an intimate level, and she spent years before that understanding Raven Johnson's game at the same depth. When Boston talks about this dynamic publicly, she is refreshingly direct. She says fans always have more beef than the players do. She says when you put on the same jersey, everything before it simply stops matching. The rivalries, the viral moments, the social media pylons, all of it becomes irrelevant the second you are competing toward the same goal. That sounds simple, but it is actually one of the more sophisticated things you can say about professional sports culture, because the fans who consume the drama from the outside often cannot separate the story from reality. The players, the ones actually doing the work, are operating in an entirely different headspace. Johnson and Clark face each other in both the 2023 and 2024 Final Fours. They competed at the absolute highest level of college basketball, and now they are being asked to funnel all that competitive energy into building something together instead of against each other. Aliyah Boston has seen both sides of that equation up close. Her confidence in this working is not blind optimism. It is first-hand experience, the chess move that gave Minnesota everything. Now, let us zoom out from Indiana for a minute, because one of the most fascinating stories from draft night was not about the Fever at all. It was about how the Minnesota Lynx ended up with the second overall pick in 2026 despite finishing first in the entire league last season with a 34-10 record. This requires some context because the sequence of trades that made it happen is genuinely wild. Back in 2024, the Chicago Sky wanted to move up in the draft to select LSU forward Angel Reese. To make that happen, they traded with Minnesota. As part of that deal, Chicago sent the Lynx the rights to swap first-round picks in 2026. At the time, it seemed reasonable. You give up future flexibility to get the player you want today. But here is where it gets painful for Chicago. That 2026 pick swap gave Minnesota the right to take whichever first-round pick was better. And when the lottery balls fell, Chicago's pick landed at number 2 overall. Minnesota immediately exercised the swap and walked into draft night with a top 2 selection despite winning the whole league. Think about what that means in practical terms. The Chicago Sky traded away the second overall pick in the 2026 draft to move up for Angel Reese 2 years earlier. And that decision cost them Olivia Miles, what Chicago gave away without knowing it. Olivia Miles is a 5 feet 10 inches point guard out of TCU who spent her senior season doing things that made scouts run out of superlatives. She averaged double figures in both points and assists. She drew the opposing defense's best defender every night and still consistently made the right play. She is exactly the kind of foundational, franchise-altering point guard that teams wait years to acquire. Minnesota took her second overall and handed her to Cheryl Reeve, who just happens to be one of the most decorated coaches in WNBA history. A coach who has already built one championship roster and knows exactly how to develop elite young talent in a winning environment. Chicago, meanwhile, is sitting without that pick, looking at what could have been and trying to figure out what Angel Reese alone can build around. That is not a knock on Angel Reese. She is a legitimate force. But the gap between what Chicago gave up and what they got in return is going to be debated in WNBA front office circles for a long time. You do not casually give away the second pick in a loaded draft class. And when that pick walks into a well-built Lynx system with Cheryl Reeve calling the plays, the cost of that decision becomes even more apparent. Some roster moves age beautifully. Others become cautionary tales. This one is still writing its ending. But the opening chapter is not kind Chicago. Washington's blueprint was hidden in plain sight. While everyone was focused on Indiana and Minnesota, Washington quietly assembled one of the most strategically coherent draft classes of the night. Lauren Betts at 4th overall, Kiki Rice at 7th, Cody McMahon in the 2nd round. 3 picks that on the surface look like solid individual talent evaluations. But when you look closer, every single one of them tells the same story. Every player Washington drafted is built for transition basketball, not half-court sets, not slow, methodical possession offense. Pure pace and pressure. Get the rebound, push the ball, attack before the defense can set. Lauren Betts is a center who can handle and outlet the ball immediately off a defensive board. Kiki Rice played in one of the fastest offensive systems in college basketball at UCLA. Cody McMahon's entire college skill set was developed around getting ahead of defenders in open floor situations. And with Shakira Austin already on the roster as a mobile big who can run the floor, Washington has a lineup that is structurally designed to make every game feel like a controlled sprint. This was not accidental. Coach Nilla Ivey wants to play fast, and she just drafted players whose college coaches had the exact same philosophy. When a front office and a coaching staff are aligned on scheme, it usually means something real is being built. Washington is not just adding talent. They are constructing a specific identity and betting that pace will overwhelm teams who are not ready for it. That might be the most underrated storyline from the entire draft night. The moment the commissioner made it awkward. And then there's Kathy Engelbert. Before the draft, a reporter asked the WNBA commissioner a pretty standard question. How much longer does she plan to be in this role? It is the kind of question that any executive leading a major sports organization during a period of rapid growth should expect. Commissioners of the NFL, NBA, and MLB get asked versions of this question constantly. Engelbert's response was not what anyone expected. She shot back with, "I wonder whether you would ask that of a man." The reporter responded immediately, saying they would. And suddenly, the entire interaction became a very public reminder that being prepared for the obvious question matters regardless of the context. Here's the thing. Kathy Engelbert has genuinely overseen a transformative period for the WNBA. Record television ratings, sold-out arenas, mainstream media coverage that the league had never experienced before at this scale. The league signed a massive new broadcast deal. A new collective bargaining agreement was finalized just weeks before the 2026 season. There's a real legitimate case to be made for her leadership impact. But the question about her future as commissioner is also completely fair game. Roger Goodell fields questions about his NFL future regularly. Adam Silver himself acknowledged that conversations about Engelbert's future beyond 2026 have not even started yet. That is not a hostile environment. That is journalism doing its job during a genuinely uncertain period for the league's leadership structure. A confident answer about her vision, about what she still wants to accomplish, about where she sees the WNBA going over the next 5 years, would have landed so much better than a deflection. The moment passed, but the missed opportunity lingered. Great leadership is about owning the spotlight when it is pointed at you, not redirecting it. What the Fever are actually building. Let's bring it back to Indiana, because the bigger picture here is worth sitting with. Look at what the Fever have assembled over the past 2 drafts alone. Caitlin Clark at first overall in 2024. Aliyah Boston a year before that, also first overall. Now Raven Johnson at 10th in 2026. That is a core of 3 players who won at the highest levels of college basketball. Boston won a national championship at South Carolina. Clark won back-to-back championship games at Iowa. Johnson won a national championship and was recognized as the best defensive guard in the most competitive conference in women's college basketball. This is not an organization stumbling into good players. This is a franchise with clear philosophy, drafting players who already know what it takes to win, and then building a professional culture around that mentality. The expanded WNBA roster rules, which allowed teams to carry more players this season, give the Fever additional flexibility to develop this young core without the pressure of immediate contributions at every position. Johnson does not need to be a starter on day one. She needs to grow into a professional role while making Caitlin Clark a better offensive player every single practice. That is smart long-term team building. And for a franchise that missed the playoff for years before Clark arrived, it signals a genuine commitment to sustain winning rather than just short-term attention. The Fever are not done. The off-season moves still to come will determine whether this core has enough around it to compete with the Minnesota Lynx, the New York Liberty, and whoever else emerges as a legitimate contender. But the foundation is real. The philosophy is clear, and the players they are bringing in understand what championship culture actually requires because they have all lived inside it. The bigger story nobody is asking. Here's the thing about Raven Johnson joining the Indiana Fever that nobody is fully saying out loud. This is a player who 3 years ago was pushed to her lowest point by a single viral moment involving her now teammate. She considered walking away from the sport entirely. Instead, she stayed. She grinded. She won. And she made herself undeniable. And now she walks into a professional locker room with the exact player who was at the center of that moment competing for a championship. That arc is not just compelling sports content. It is a genuinely remarkable story about resilience, about what it means to keep going when the internet has already written your narrative for you, and about how quickly the story can change when you refuse to let someone else write the ending. Aliyah Boston already said it best. When you put on the same jersey, everything before it stops matching. The past does not disappear, but what it means changes completely. Raven Johnson is going to be fine in Indiana. More than fine. She is going to make the Fever better in ways that do not always show up in the box score, but absolutely show up in the win column. And Caitlin Clark, one of the most competitive players in the sport, is going to be better for going against elite defense every single day in practice. The fans who want drama between these two players are going to be waiting a long time, because these are professionals who understand that the court is where you compete and the locker room is where you build something, the season ahead. So here is where everything stands heading into May when the Indiana Fever opened their 2026 season against the Dallas Wings. The Wings took UConn's Azzi Fudd first overall. The Lynx added Olivia Miles to a roster that already won the whole league. The Mystics are going to be running faster than anyone expects, and the Fever are heading into the season with arguably the deepest combination of offensive brilliance and defensive toughness they have had since the franchise started chasing a championship. Raven Johnson did not come to Indiana to be a storyline. She came to be a solution. And in a league where every team at the top is stacking talent and running real systems, the teams that win championships are the ones who find the right pieces for the right roles and build a culture where everyone understands their job. Indiana just did exactly that with pick number 10. The question is not whether Raven Johnson and Caitlin Clark can coexist. The players already answered that question before the offseason even started. The real question is whether the Fever can build enough around this core to make a genuine championship run before that window closes. Drop your answer in the comments right now. Do you think the Indiana Fever have what it takes to compete for a title in 2026? And which team worries you most heading into the season, Minnesota, New York, or someone else entirely? If you want every major WNBA move, every roster breakdown, and every storyline that matters this season covered in depth, subscribe right now and hit the bell so you never miss an upload. We are just getting started.